Here. All right, well, I want to thank everyone for coming out today. Today we're going to provide you with something that you all aren't used to with respect to congressional investigations, and that's evidence. Committee Republicans have spoken with multiple whistleblowers from numerous schemes involving the Biden family, reviewed Hunter Biden's laptop, and received documents of previously unknown transactions. What we found are business plans aimed at targets around the world based on influence peddling, including with people closely tied to foreign governments like China and Russia. We also found plans based in the United States where the Biden family swindled investors of hundreds of thousands of dollars, all with Joe Biden's participation and knowledge. In 2019, his campaign for president, Joe Biden told the American people he had nothing to had conversations with his family about their business dealings. That was a lie. Whistleblowers described President Biden as chairman of the board for these businesses. He personally participated in meetings and phone calls. Documents show that he was a partner with access to an office. To be clear, Joe Biden is the big dog. This evidence raises troubling questions about whether President Biden is a national security risk and about whether he is compromised by foreign governments. Despite the president's claim that he wasn't involved in Biden family business schemes, these photos show Joe Biden meeting with his family associates while vice president. Committee Republicans have identified over 50 countries the Biden family sought businesses in. On the international side of the Biden family business, the deals were often led by Hunter Biden. And that map there behind the flag shows all the countries where the Bidens had a footprint in international business dealings. The investigation reveals a family that engaged with some of America's most powerful adversaries, planning to sell one of the largest sources of cobalt for electric vehicles in the world to the Chinese, for example. The Bidens flourished and became millionaires by simply offering access to the family. Among the dozens of shell companies the Bidens set up, there were millions of dollars of wire transfers, flights on Air Force Two to conduct personal business, and meetings with heads of state, all while Joe Biden was aware of what was happening. All the while, he turned a blind eye. Many transactions related to these businesses have raised red flags at U.S. banks. A suspicious activity report, or SAR, is a document a bank must file with the Treasury Department when a transaction is suspected to be related to money laundering or fraud or other types of criminal activity. According to media reports, the Biden family accumulated over 150 SARs. One SAR generated by an American bank to the Treasury Department connects Hunter Biden and his business associates to international human trafficking, among other illegal activities. The money that was being made from foreign principals in the same room as Joe Biden was increasingly spent on furthering illegal activity. The SAR showed that Hunter Biden was conducting business with suspected human traffickers. The money gained through influence peddling was funneled to a suspected criminal enterprise, again, one linked to human trafficking. We have repeatedly called on the Biden Treasury Department to release additional financial documents to committee Republicans, but thus far Treasury has refused. We want to know what the Biden administration is trying to hide from the American people and why they are not being transparent. We also found evidence Hunter Biden sought to evade these SARs using his financial advisor, coincidentally a Clinton administration official. We will continue to pursue all evidence, and specifically the SARs and bank records in the new Congress. As part of our investigation, we have evidence that the finances, credit cards, and bank accounts of Hunter and Joe Biden were commingled, if not shared. And on some accounts, at least, red flags were raised by banks to the account owner or owners indicating suspicious or illegal activity. One of Hunter's closest associates, Eric Sherwin, was accessing Joe Biden's money and writing checks to reimburse Hunter. Sherwin arranged the Biden's international deals around the world. At the same time, he was a frequent visitor to the White House, and Joe Biden during the Obama administration, visiting close to 30 times, and sometimes with international business partners and Hunter, according to Hunter's calendar. Sherwin was also the president of Hunter's company and was appointed by President Obama to a position in the administration. After an apparent falling out with Sherwin, Hunter began coordinating business himself, and increasingly the deals brought in Joe Biden as a direct equity holder. One of these deals involved the sale of American natural gas to China. Evidence suggests Joe Biden had a 10% equity stake through his son. And behind Glenn and Andrew is a map from Hunter's laptop. This was a PowerPoint presentation on his laptop in Chinese that they used in working with the Chinese. Now, let's think about this for a second. At a time when Americans are suffering from high energy prices because of this administration's terrible energy policy, we find evidence that Hunter Biden and Joe Biden were involved in a scheme to try to get China to buy liquefied natural gas, and from a whistleblower to try to get their foot in the door with China starting to purchase an interest in natural gas drillers. And people are in outrage over China buying farmland in the Dakotas. What about China starting to buy into our American energy industry at a time when we have an energy crisis because of the bad policies of the Biden administration? Now let that sink in. Hunter brought in millions of dollars from this deal from entities tied to the Chinese government. In emails obtained by committee Republicans, Hunter wanted keys made for Joe Biden and Jim Biden, his office mate. He provided Joe Biden's personal cell number and called him his partner. The other partners in that deal were two people closely tied to the Chinese Communist Party. And that's behind Andy and Jim, that's the email where Hunter sent to the landlord requesting keys, and the Chinese partners were on the email, and where he said, Joe would need a key, and he even put Joe's cell phone number on there. Domestically, Jim Biden, Joe Biden's brother, used the Biden name to enrich himself in return for the promise that when Joe Biden became president in 2020, business partners would get rich by having access to a future Biden administration. By promising access to financing through Middle Eastern, Russian, and Chinese connections he made through Joe Biden, and by bringing his brother Joe Biden onto phone calls, Jim Biden was able to convince companies to give him loans of hundreds of thousands of dollars that he never repaid. The Biden administration has answered none of our requests for information regarding the Biden family or the financial transactions they engaged in. Instead, the Biden administration has spent over $250,000 to staff to, quote, deflect Hunter storage. Protecting the president's son who has committed crimes with Americans' tax dollars is a waste. The domestic and international scheme that promised access or wealth in a future Biden administration constitute fraud. And the president's participation in enriching his family is, in a word, abuse of the highest order. Rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse will be the primary goal of a Republican House Oversight Committee. As such, this investigation will be a top priority. We are releasing a report today that details what we have uncovered. We are also sending letters to the Biden administration officials and Biden family associates renewing our request for voluntary production of documents relevant to this investigation. This is an investigation of Joe Biden, the President of the United States, and why he lied to the American people about his knowledge and participation in his family's international business schemes. National security interests require the committee to conduct investigation, and we will pursue all avenues that have long been ignored. Committee Republicans have uncovered evidence of federal crimes committed by and to the benefit of members of the President's family. These include conspiracy or defrauding the United States, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, violation of the Foreign Agents Registration Act, violations of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, violations of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, tax evasion, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. The Biden family's business dealings implicate a wide range of criminality, from human trafficking to potential violations of the Constitution. In the 118th Congress, this committee will evaluate the status of Joe Biden's relationship with his family's foreign partners and whether he is a president who is compromised or swayed by foreign dollars and influence. I want to be clear. This is an investigation of Joe Biden, and that's where the committee will focus in this next Congress. I now turn it over to Oversight member and the next chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan.
Thanks, Jamie. So I would just start with this question. What part of Mr. Comer's presentation was Russian disinformation? I mean, never forget what happened on October 19th, 2020, 15 days before the most important election we have in our country. Who's going to be the next president of the United States? 15 days before that, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Clapper, and 49 other people signed a letter that said the following. It is for these reasons that we write to say that the arrival on the U.S. political scene of emails purportedly belonging to Vice President Biden's son, Hunter, has all the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation. They further went on to say, we want to emphasize that we do not know if the emails provided to the New York Post are genuine or not, just that our experience makes us deeply suspicious that the Russian government played a significant role in this case. And of course, that letter became the pretext for suppressing this story, again, just days before the most important election we have in our country. So I would ask this, was J.P. Morgan's suspicious activity report to the Treasury Department, was that just a classic earmark of a Russian information operation? How about when Hunter Biden sent the email that Mr. Comer pointed to? Sent the email asking for keys to his new office space, one for himself, one for President Biden, one for his uncle Jim Biden, and one for the emissary for the chairman of the Chinese energy company CFCC. Was that just Russian disinformation operation in place? What part of Mr. Comer's presentation prompted the FBI to go to Facebook and say, hey, you want to be on the lookout for Russian misinformation here this election season? What part of his presentation would prompt that? And I think it's also important to understand, never forget how this story has changed. I mean, think about this. When it started off, it was, no, it's not his laptop. It's not his laptop. Then it was, well, it's his laptop, but remember, it's Russian disinformation and no one did anything wrong. Then it was, well, maybe he did something wrong, but President Biden didn't know about it. And now it's, well, maybe President Biden knew about it and was involved, but it didn't influence his decisions. In fact, yesterday, there was a story in Politico which said that. The story in Politico yesterday, investigating investigators, dim strategists to launch counterpunch to House GOP. Story in Politico yesterday, here's what I said in there. Quote, no evidence has publicly emerged that Joe Biden's decisions were affected by his son's business dealings. Wow, we went from it wasn't his laptop and it was Russian disinformation to, oh, whatever was in there didn't affect the president's business dealings, even though he was involved, even though the laptop was real, even though it wasn't disinformation. That's how far we've come. So I think I think there are all kinds of questions that need to be answered, and we're determined to get there. Here's some of them that I have. Did the FBI brief Twitter as well? We know they briefed Facebook. We know that had an impact on the election. There's been surveys done where thousands and thousands of voters across this country said it might have impacted their decision in the election in 2020. Did the FBI brief any of the 51 former intelligence officials who signed that letter? Again, that letter that became the pretext for suppressing this story. Who did the briefings? Who briefed Facebook? Here's a name that I think is interesting. Timothy Thibault. So Mr. Thibault, now remember, we just did a report 2 weeks ago, Judiciary Committee, a report that talked about the political influence and the political shenanigans going on in our Justice Department based on 14 FBI agents who've come talk to our office as whistleblowers. One of those agents said, and this is the term he used, he said, at the highest levels of the FBI, specifically the Washington field office, he said it's rotted to the core. Not talking about rank and file agents. They're doing good work. Talking about the top people at the Washington field office. We had another whistleblower who brought up the name Mr. Thibault and said Mr. Thibault is pressuring agents to catalog and categorize cases in a specific way to satisfy this narrative about domestic violence extremism. But what's interesting is a different whistleblower, one who didn't come to our office, a different whistleblower who went to Senator Grassley's office, said that Mr. Thibault, by the way, the head of the special agent in charge at the Washington field office, Mr. Thibault is also the guy who suppressed information about the Hunter Biden story in October of 2020. I'd like to talk to Mr. Thibault. In fact, we've asked to talk to Mr. Thibault. Even though he said publicly, I welcome a chance to answer questions, he's refused to come in and talk to us. That's someone we need to talk to. Why has the Biden administration suddenly changed their position on suspicious activity reports? Used to be, Mr. Comer wanted to see him, any member of Congress, any chairman wanted to see him, any ranking member wanted to see him, any member of Congress, any committee, you got a chance to see him. Suddenly, no, we can't see him. I think Mr. Comer and our team at the Oversight Committee would kind of like to see the other 148. They've seen two. They'd like to see the other 148. So We're committed to getting to the truth, the facts. We think that's what the American people are entitled to. We're gonna try to help Representative Comer and the team here at Oversight with our work on judiciary, but with a specific focus on what the FBI was doing. We know these 51 former intel officials. They got security clearance. How often are they talking to the FBI? Are they talking to the FBI? Who's doing the talking? Who's doing the briefing? Were they briefed? There's so many questions that need answered so we can get to the bottom of this. And the final thing I would say is this. A colleague of mine said this in a committee hearing a few weeks ago, Mr. Gates. He said, when is the FBI going to quit interfering with elections? 2016, they spied on President Trump's campaign. 2018, it was the Mueller investigation. 2020, they suppressed information about the Hunter Biden story. 2022, they raided the president's home 91 days before the election. Maybe it'd be nice if the FBI and the Justice Department just stayed out of it and let we the people decide who we think should represent us, who we think should lead us. That's supposed to be how America works. So this is the focus on the Judiciary Committee, the political nature of the Justice Department, and the linkage now to what was happening with the Hunter Biden story. Again, just 15 days before we have presidential elections.
We'll be happy to answer questions. Anyone on the committee will be happy to answer questions. Yes, sir.
Are you also putting the FBI on notice for not bringing, and the Department of Justice on notice for not bringing any charges?
And let me be very clear. Jim said this, but Jim's going to answer that question. The Oversight Committee, we are focused on the bank records moving forward. The Judiciary Committee is going to be focused on that. And Jim's answer that question.
No, we're not putting anybody on notice. We just want to get the truth. I mean, that's why we issued a 1,000-page report 2 weeks ago that talked about. So I've been in Congress a few years now. I've never seen anything like it. 14 agents come talk to us while we're in the minority about how political that place has become. Talking about the purging going. These are terms they use, not we. Purging going on, purging of agents. The pressure to categorize cases in a political fashion. The putting the threat tag label on moms and dads who show up at school board meetings. We know of over 24 parents who were investigated, no one charged. But think of the chilling impact that has. You show up at some parent's home, you talk to them because she's in the group Moms for Liberty, as an example. You talk to them. Think of the chilling impact that has on other parents. So that's what we're interested in getting to the bottom of. And the only way you can hold people accountable and hopefully stop the behavior is to present it to the country. That's what we got to do. So we're committed to doing it in an aggressive fashion, but in a way that's consistent with the Constitution.
Thank you. We know that the Department of Justice and FBI has been investigating Hunter Biden since 2018. How do you know that these claims that you are laying out in your remarks today and some of the examples that you have up here aren't claims that have already been fully investigated by those federal prosecutors?
Maybe they have. We don't know.
And can I follow up with the map that you were referring to? When was that PowerPoint from?
That PowerPoint was from what year? Do we know exactly? I think it's in your packet, but 2017.
So my follow-up there is, if this is from 2017, what is the connection to, the current energy crisis now, if that was years ago?
Are you real? I mean, Joe Biden says he's going to stand up to China. Joe Biden says he's going to rewrite our whole energy policy, America first. And he was a 10% equity owner in a company whose sole mission was to purchase liquefied natural gas from the United States and try to take over the natural gas industry in America through natural gas wholesalers and natural gas drillers. I mean, I don't think Joe Biden's been honest to the American people about that. And I think that's a question you all need to ask at the next White House press conference. We didn't know about your involvement in a Chinese energy company. Does that in any way, shape, or form impact your energy policy? And that's something that I think every American deserves answer to, especially at a time when we're faced with record high energy prices because of Biden's energy policy. Yes.
Will your committee call Hunter Biden or anybody in the Biden family to testify in investigation sector?
Yeah, we would love to talk to people in the Biden family, specifically Hunter and Jim Biden. I think the most important thing for us right now is to get those bank records. I mean, we have 2 suspicious activity reports in hand now, not because of the Biden family and certainly not because of Janet Yellen at Treasury. These suspicious activity reports are very detailed. And these aren't from little banks like in my part of Kentucky. These are Wells Fargo, J.P. Morgan. So these suspicious activity reports, and I don't think from day one a lot of people in the media understand what a suspicious activity report is. Just so you know, suspicious activity reports were created after September the 11th as a way for the government to be able to track foreign transactions into American terror cells. Over time, it's expanded to include things like money laundering and other types of criminal activity. Because when, in September 11th, remember, the banks knew that these terrorists were getting wire transfers from Saudi Arabia, but the FBI and the federal authorities didn't. So that was how these were created. Under President Bush, under President Obama, and under President Trump, any committee in Congress could have access to those suspicious activity reports. But when Joe Biden became president, he changed the rules. Now, does anyone here doubt my suspicion that he changed the rules because his son and possibly himself had 150 suspicious activity reports? Are we the only ones that find that odd that Joe Biden would change the rules when he became president? In fact, Maxine Waters had legislation to change the rules back. She didn't know why he changed the rules. And she had a bill, and part of the language of the bill was to override that rule and give Congress the access to those suspicious activity reports. I actually voted for Maxine Waters' bill because that was in there, and I don't vote for a lot of Maxine Waters' bills. So, yes.
Thanks, Congressman, for doing this. A question for both of you. I'm wondering if you might be able to confirm that your committees will be investigating Speaker Pelosi and the Department of Justice for their treatment of defendants jailed in connection with January 6th, a promise that potentially Speaker McCarthy made to the House Freedom Caucus earlier this week.
He's the Department of Justice guy.
We're focused on, you saw our report, well, maybe you didn't. I hope if you didn't, you take time to read it. We're focused on how political our Justice Department has become. It's not a question of if they are political, if they are. They're making decisions on a political basis. We're going to look at all that.
What about Pelosi and the treatment of January 6th defendants specifically?
We're looking at umbrella of political operations at the Justice Department, all the way back to the very first whistleblower came to us over a year ago. About a year ago, I should say, regarding the school boards issue. So we're concerned about anything that is being done in a political fashion at the Justice Department. Because remember, you got to step back. It's supposed to be, in this great country, the greatest country ever, it's supposed to be equal treatment under the law. And when you have a Justice Department that's not following that fundamental principle I think that sets our country apart from all others, that is a major problem.
Do you think the January 6th insurrectionists have been wrongly imprisoned?
I didn't say anything. All I said is we're going to look at the politics at the Justice Department based on the fact that we have had 14 different, actually more than 14 now, whistleblowers come talk to us. That's what we're going to focus on.
And my last question is just, what are the grounds to investigate?
Keep it about Hunter Biden. This is kind of a big deal, we think. If we can keep it about Hunter Biden, that would be great.
Some Republicans.
I just wanted to piggyback because she said it for January 6th. Just what you plan to do with the January 6th investigation. It seems like you guys.
I think that's a question.
FBI.
I think that's a question for Kevin McCarthy. That we're focused on a lot of investigations now. I've been very transparent with the media on it. That wasn't one of them, but yes.
Okay, so can you kind of preview how this is going to play out? So it sounds like your focus initially is going to be on these suspicious activity reports, which you endeavor to receive somehow. Is that going to be through potentially subpoenaing a bank? And then once you receive those, are you expecting a smoking gun from that, or is that going to lead to more avenues? And then finally, what deliverable are you expecting? Another report, or is this do you see this terminating as some sort of referral? How do you see this playing out?
Mm-hmm. Well, obviously, with the two that we already have,
How did you get those?
Well, we can't reveal our sources, but the two are on the internet, so you can dig and find them. They're out there, but we verify they're 100% factual.
And I'm not questioning that,
Right.
but if you got that from an individual, why would that individual have two?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked that question. Because, again, I don't think a lot of people in the media and in Congress, for that matter, understand the suspicious activity report. Byron Donald does. He's a financial expert. I've had the honor of being on the bank board. When you get a suspicious activity report, it flags every account that's had a transaction within a certain time period. Am I right, Lance? So the suspicious activity report that we have shows where Hunter Biden purchased whatever with the escort service. The escort service then paid the prostitute. And then the bank implies that the escort service is under suspicion for human trafficking. We see where the escort service is the prostitute. She's not from the United States. Again, I don't want this to be about the prostitute. Here's the thing: Hunter Biden isn't this innocent guy that's just got a bad rap because he had a drug problem. And the Republicans don't need to waste any time on Hunter Biden. We're not trying to prove Hunter Biden is a bad actor. He is. If anybody wants to disagree with that, then there's nothing we have to talk about. Our investigation is about Joe Biden. And we already have evidence that would point that Joe Biden was involved with Hunter Biden on these. So we want the bank records, and that's our focus. We're trying to stay focused on, was Joe Biden directly involved with Hunter Biden's business deals, and is he compromised? That's our investigation.
And so if you found that through the reports, what would be your deliverable? Another report, or would you refer those charges, or do you foresee this resulting in some sort of impeachment?
We will issue a report. We will hand over any potential criminal activity to the appropriate authorities, and that's what we do. We investigate.
No, we're a legislative body, so the liberals, we may need to change the disclosure laws. We may need to look at this investigation started because of the concern with big tech, FBI talking to big tech suppressing, throttling back information that we, the people, should have had access to when we're getting ready to make the most important decision we make as a country on who's going to lead us. That's where this starts. So do we need to change Section 230? It's all about the legislative purposes. Supreme Court's been clear. That's where we got to focus. And I would just argue fundamentally it's about the First Amendment, that the idea that they were suppressing critical information that the country should have had access to. And they did it literally 15 days before. And you tell me what in the report that Mr. Comer and the team has put together is Russian disinformation. That was all BS, and everyone knows it was BS, and frankly, should have known it at the time, and I think did know it at the time, but did it anyway. So that's the legislative purpose that we got to get to. So, but we don't know where that's going to go. That's what we're trying to do.
Mr. Comer.
Yeah, some Republicans have questioned the timing of this. Why make this your very first visible order of business, investigating President Biden and his family?
If you look at the Commitment to America, there were 4 tenets of that. The fourth was to hold this administration accountable. That's the job of the Oversight Committee. I know some of the media said, well, this is what the Republicans, their whole sole focus is. This is the focus of the Oversight Committee. Now, I know Kevin said the first legislation we're going to vote on is to repeal the 87,000 IRS agents, to reduce the size of government, because that's tackling inflation. We have inflation because the Democrats have spent too much money. So we have a legislative agenda, and we're focused on a lot of things in Congress. But from the Oversight Committee, we're in charge of investigations. We feel that this is of the utmost importance.
And to follow up, do you expect cooperation from the Biden administration and when it comes to the Justice Department, which is also investigating Hunter Biden? If the DOJ doesn't cooperate, what means do you have at your disposal right now to get the information that they've uncovered on him?
So, just on cooperation. Well, first, they haven't responded to any of the correspondence, any of the letters, any of the inquiries that came from Ranking Member Comer. Second, they changed the suspicious activity report process and protocol. And third, they've now set up a committee, according to reporters, I don't know, maybe they're in this room, the report in Politico, that said, they set up a committee to attack us and to come after us. So, I don't know, you guess. They're probably not gonna work with this too well.
But what means do you have at your
really are
disposal?
unprecedented. Changing the SARS and setting up that's pretty impressive.
Should
Can I
President
follow on
Biden
SARS?
be forced to come and testify on Capitol Hill?
I would say one other thing. One of the most important things we can, I guess I've said it a couple times, one of the most important things we can do is do the work that needs to be done so that we can hopefully have a Justice Department that doesn't operate in a political fashion. That's my focus. I think it's everyone's focus. So I think that's pretty darn important to the American people.
Mr. George,
Is impeachment on the table?
a quick follow-up
Congressman
question on that particular point. There's Maine Justice, and then there's Mr. Weiss in Delaware, who, as you know, was appointed by President Trump and initiated this investigation under the previous administration. Just generally, because some of these suggestions that have been made in terms of the investigation moving towards President Biden have not apparently We haven't uncovered any evidence that that is currently being discussed in front of the grand jury in Delaware or in that particular office. Do you have confidence, forget the larger question of the Biden Justice Department, do you have confidence that Mr. Weiss is doing a thorough job in his investigation?
All I'm going to say is there shouldn't be politics anywhere. It should be driven by the facts, the law, the Constitution. We've had over 14 whistleblowers come talk to us. Every single one has said, at the highest levels of the Justice Department here in D.C., the Washington field office and the Justice Department here in D.C., that is where the politics are involved. That is where the political decisions are being made. We have a concern with that. That's what we're focused on.
Do you have any, just to quickly follow on my follow-up, do you have any reason to believe that Maine Justice is attempting to influence the investigation?
All I know is what the whistleblowers have told our office. That's what we're focused on.
And I'll wrap it up with this. We'll all be available throughout the day for questions. I realize that congressional oversight doesn't have a lot of credibility in Washington. I blame Adam Schiff for that. We're going to change that. We're not going to talk about anything unless we have evidence. And that's how I started this out. You're going to be presented with something you haven't been used to over the past 4 years, evidence. And we believe that this is of the utmost importance. I've been watching the panels on CNN, everywhere else, for saying, why are Republicans investigating Hunter Biden? Why are we wasting time doing this? This is an investigation of Joe Biden. I think we've laid out the evidence as to why we feel it's important. And we're going to move forward with that. We're going to do a lot of investigations. We're going to do a lot of probing. We're focused on waste, fraud, and abuse. There's no shortage of that in this federal government, let me assure you that. And that's going to be a priority for this committee. Every member of this committee is going to have priorities in areas where they're focused on in the next Congress. And we're going to try to restore credibility to congressional investigations, and we're going to try to get the backs of the taxpayers, because the taxpayers are the one that's taking it on the chin. Catherine, I'll end with you.
What do you make of the fact that the U.S. Attorney in Delaware has been investigating Hunter Biden and his financial activities for 4 years, and yet no charges have been brought?
I'll say that, and then Jim can end with that. Look, the more you look into Hunter Biden, the more bad things pop up. I don't know if that's the situation. I don't know if he's getting resistance at the Department of Justice. From what I've heard, they're looking into the tax evasion. There's no question he's evaded taxes. That's why he got the Hollywood lawyer to loan him $2 million to try to get caught up with the IRS on his tax bill. But at the end of the day, we're focused on some things that I think every American needs answers to. And one thing that I've learned from talking to a lot of you off the scene here is that I don't think a lot of people realize the evidence that's already out there pertaining to Hunter Biden. And I don't think anybody realized that Joe Biden is, in fact, involved in a lot of these. He was, in fact, involved in a lot of these. So the goal from this press conference is to show you, number one, this is an investigation of Joe Biden. We're focused on the bank records. We're very specifically focused on the bank records and the bank violations. Remember, Congress used to have access to the bank violations until Joe Biden changed the rules, which that itself should be a front page story above the fold. I'm not telling you what to do, but that's pretty odd that he would change the rules to do that. And we laid out why we think it's important. So Jim can follow up.
Will you impeach Biden?
Thank you.
Okay.
We are live again from Hollywood, Florida for this year's Patriot Awards, and there is another amazing crowd here tonight. Give yourselves a hand. And we hope everyone is having a lot of fun. We have a great show coming your way, starting with some big news about Nancy Pelosi. The top Democrat calling it quits after Republicans took away her gavel by winning back the House.
We must move boldly into the future. I will not seek re-election to Democratic leadership in the next Congress. For me, the hours come for a new generation to lead the Democratic caucus that I so deeply respect.
Pelosi's nearly 20-year grip on the Democratic Party has finally come to an end. She will stay as a member of Congress for the next 2 years. No word what's beyond that. Pelosi is stepping aside because there is a new sheriff in town. Republicans winning that magical number of 218 House seats, with the possibility of that majority growing with a few more races still too close to call. Kevin McCarthy, who is on track to be the next speaker, sounds like he's ready to hold President Biden accountable.
It's one-size gavel with the ability to subpoena and hold this government accountable, secure this border, fight to make us energy independent, give parents a say in their kids' education, and actually look what the DOJ is doing, what the DHS is doing, and others. And that's exactly what we're going to do on day one in this House.
Judge Janine, Nancy Pelosi making that decision. We kind of anticipated it, but kind of interesting. She's not leaving Congress. She's just going to step down from the speakership and then, I don't know, I guess be helping her constituents for the next 2 years.
Well, you know, it's interesting that she talked about, you know, the next generation, the new generation, but I can't imagine Nancy Pelosi actually staying in Congress and not having, in the House, not having the leadership role. I mean, that I don't have any information to support that, but, you know, we take her at her word. She'll stay there. She could keep working, but not a leadership position. But I think what's going to get to her is when the Republicans start the investigations that they promised during the midterms, and that's going to make her crazy because she won't have the power that she had as Speaker of the House. And I think that when they start those investigations, they should recognize that what's really important right now is the things that American people are concerned about, and that is the country going in the wrong direction, the cost of food prices and gas prices. But I think there's also another piece that has to be looked into, and that is the issue of Hunter Biden, all of the money that he's collected from around the world, and what Joe Biden's role may have been in that situation. And I think that's going to put her over the edge. But we'll see.
A couple of members of Congress held a press conference earlier, and they talked about some of the investigations. Let's hear a little bit of that.
This is an investigation of Joe Biden, the President of the United States, and why he lied to the American people about his knowledge and participation in his family's international business schemes. Documents show that he was a partner with access to an office. To be clear, Joe Biden is the big dog.
We went from it wasn't his laptop and it was Russian disinformation to, oh, whatever was in there didn't affect the president's business dealings, even though he was involved, even though the laptop was real, even though it wasn't disinformation. That's how far we've come.
All right, Jesse, I'm sure you'll be following all of that on prime time, but as Judge Janine said, there were promises made by House Republicans when they were running for the Congress that if they got the majority, they would have these hearings. So here we go.
Yeah, we learned a lot in the last 24 hours. One of those is Harold Ford Jr. can party. Oh, my God.
Yes.
How many fingers am I holding up, Harold? You know, if you're going to run for president, you got to get that out of your system. So
you got home after I did.
I did. So they have witness testimony, they have bank records, and they have the laptop. And it's probably going to show that Joe Biden committed conspiracy, wire fraud. There was involvement in international sex trafficking through Hunter Biden, and possible abuse of power and possible impeachable offenses, because they're saying right now he's a threat to national security. He's possibly compromised by America's enemies because he was looking to sell out American gas, drilling rights, cobalt to the Chinese. You know, Hunter was getting bribed by diamonds. They were commingling bank accounts. They had shell companies set up everywhere. 50 other countries were involved in this. So at the end of the day, they're going to have to bring in people to testify. And you can't keep a lid on this for that much longer because there's suspicious wire activity coming in from Beijing, coming in from Moscow, very suspicious that they're trying to block access to. So when they throw these subpoenas down, it's going to look like a cover-up. And I'm really proud of the Republicans for throwing down the gauntlet that hard. Now, I don't care if it's a red wave, red trickle. Nancy Pelosi is gone, and very happy about that. And she leaves a really just vicious legacy from corruption to Obamacare to all kinds of shenanigans and reckless spending. And the Republicans are going to put a brake on the reckless spending, and they're going to get out there in front. And the first thing I want to see Fauci hauled in because I want to watch him squirm. I want to see him disclose these royalties he's taking from Big Pharma. And then I also want to see this little mini Madoff mega donor come up and testify about how he bought the Senate. So there's a lot of things we want to get to, also border security, energy security, and again, just slam the brakes on Joe Biden's agenda.
Border security, Greg, was something that, it does affect everyone. It's not just the border states.
Well, I mean, I think at a minimum, we kind of want to return to normalcy. Just have a normal border. Maybe stop people from stealing so much. That would be kind of nice. Maybe men who think they're women shouldn't be in women's sports. These are just small things that we want. I'm going to miss Nancy Pelosi and her unique eyebrows, which seem plucked from a dying praying mantis. But I don't think you're going to see her go away. I think you're going to see her go from the gavel to the Gavin. Ooh. Right? Aren't they related?
Yeah.
They should be related. But also, we're coming up on Christmas. It's time for a female Scrooge, right? We don't have a female Scrooge. She would be perfect. I am all for the Hunter stuff. We've been talking about it forever, but I want to talk about something else and bring back the memories of the early five. When there's gridlock and there's budgets, there's talks of budgets, it's some of the most boring stuff in the world, but the most boring things in the world are often the most important. So we're going to talk about government shutdowns. Now, do you remember how every conversation about a government shutdown was the end of the world? Do you remember that if one national park closed, we were all going to die? And now the people that are saying that were behind the biggest shutdown of all time, COVID, and it didn't bother them at all. So I want you to remember that when the fight comes over funding. Funding is boring, but the fight will come, and when we start cutting funding, they're going to say the country will die, Granny will die, everything will die. But you got to remember, they proved us wrong just a few years ago, a few months ago, when they shut down the country. They were totally fine with that. We're still here. So I think that's going to be baloney. But I would definitely like to see all the things that the Democrats took from us, barring Harold, and it's good to see her up. I smoothed it over with the Florida police. I said that you thought it was a nude beach.
Wow, I mean, I guess the judge and I really missed out.
But the thing is, the Democrats took a lot from us.
Yeah.
They took law and order. They took safety and security. They took actual things. They took our money.
Yep.
So it's like at the most basic level, what you want from a Republican-held Congress is just to return some of the stuff that was already taken away. That's it. Gridlock. Gridlock is boring, but it's important.
Yeah, gridlock can be good.
Yes.
So, Harold, would you like to defend yourself and also talk about Nancy Pelosi?
I have no idea what these guys are talking about. They're my pals, and
it's natural that you wouldn't remember it.
So Nancy Pelosi, I understand that there's a desire, but everyone has every right to want Republicans in charge. But when Derek Jeter retired from baseball, the Red Sox congratulated him and clapped for him. That was his biggest rival. She was a formidable foe for Republicans. She was even a formidable foe for some Democrats at times. I ran against her to be the minority leader of the Congress back in 2002. She's proven to be an extraordinary leader, whether you agree with her or not. She's the only speaker who won the speakership, lost it, won it again, and lost it in just 16 years. So I congratulate her. She's a bridge to where Democrats were, are, and probably are going. And I congratulate her for opening the doors for a new generation of leadership to be ushered into Congress. Two, in all the polling data that I saw about why people should go and vote for Republicans over Democrats this last election, I don't recall in any of the top 10 being an investigation of Hunter Biden, an investigation of Dr. Fauci or investigation of some of the things that they're talking about. But they have every right to do that. I do hope we have an equal emphasis, if not more of an emphasis, on legislating than we do investigating. I don't mind investigating.
You don't get to say that after the Russia hoax, Harold. That was 2 years of the Russia hoax. No one voted for that investigation.
But at some point, the payback on top of payback on top of payback on top of payback has to stop. This is not third grade.
So you say you punched me in the mouth and, oh, let's not fight anymore.
Yeah, why do the Republicans want to have to buckle?
But let me finish my point. Because the people expect people in politics to legislate and lead. If they want to have a hearing on the best police practices around the country so we can employ it in Chicago, in New York, in Los Angeles, if they want to have a hearing on education rights and how parents are involved, the model way for parents to be involved around the country, so we can do it in Memphis, in Birmingham, in Miami, in Dallas. If you want to have a hearing on border security, how we should build a wall, put more judges down there, judge so we can figure out who deserves asylum, who doesn't, and for that matter, bringing in new workers that can help our country. Those are the hearings I want them to have. If they want to investigate Hunter and Joe Biden and Dr. Fauci,
we want to have a hearing on whether or not President Biden sold the country out to the Chinese.
And you know what? We ask him, but my only point is this. If that's where the focus is over the next 2 years, there'll be a Democratic speaker.
We can walk and chew gum at the same time.
By the way, you know...
And spit.
You know who was colluding with the Russians last night? Harold. He had like seven white Russians. 7 white Russians.
My mom, all of this is false. This is a lie on the part of my friends here.
We still want you to run for president.
Yeah.
Anyway, don't you worry. All right, coming up next, Democrats can't run away fast enough after the stunning collapse of their biggest crypto king donor.
Back to the real Hollywood, Florida, where the forecast is liberal tears. Democrats still reeling over the downfall of their top donor and favorite crypto scammer, Sam Bankman-Fried, seen here looking like a cross between Nancy and Sluggo. He apparently went to the same barber who cut Phil Spector's hair. The feds are hot on his trail and could extradite Sam from the Bahamas back to the U.S. They probably want to know where $1.7 billion of his customers' money went. Personally, I'd start looking to see if the cash wound up in Nancy Pelosi's freezer, along with her ice cream. Because Sam bankrolled the Dems to the tune of $40 million. But old Maxine Waters doesn't want to talk about that.
Do you think some lawmakers that got donations from FTX's founder should give that money back?
Well, I don't want to get into that. As a matter of fact, both sides, Democrats and Republicans, have received donations. So, thank you.
So, Jesse, everybody else does it, but the fact is, we're not talking about Bitcoin. We're talking about real money that was taken by people. I mean, taken from real people.
Yeah, and then plowed into the Democrat Senate campaign. So he bought the Senate for the Democrats and has committed all sorts of atrocious financial crimes, bigger than Enron, bigger than Madoff, and he's still sitting in the Bahamas trying to raise money.
Yeah.
Why isn't he shackled by the FBI? If this guy was a Republican donor, he'd probably be sitting in solitary confinement right now. Yep. So the Democrats are so greedy. It doesn't matter where the money comes from, doesn't matter how it's been made, it doesn't matter how dirty it is. They just say, give it, give it, give it, give it to me. And this is what happened. Remember Avenatti? They can't see any sort of red flags. Would you give millions of dollars to a guy with hair like that?
No.
I mean, he looks like Booger from Revenge of the Nerds.
That's good.
He dresses worse than Fetterman.
That's good.
And he's sleeping with half of his staff. He's in a polyamorous relationship. How has he not been Me Too'd? And then the other main squeeze he's with, he gives a $2 billion loan to, and she goes, I don't know how to do arithmetic, and oh, by the way, crypto's a big scam.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense to me. And he goes on Chuck Todd's show, and he's shaking. He's physically shaking. No one goes on Chuck Todd's show and shakes. It's the easiest interview in the world. So, you mean, all these things are popping up. He's hanging with Bill Clinton. Any businessman associated with Bill Clinton is obviously sketchy. So the FBI needs to get their asses in gear, or at least Maxine, no relation, needs to do something when she takes charge when she's inaugurated.
Wow, for a minute there, I thought you guys were related.
Yeah.
Glad
very close.
Glad he pointed that out. Harold, I'll try to make this as short as possible because I know you got a headache.
Fake news.
Yes. So, Jesse actually makes a great point, which is rare, and we should give him credit for that, that this guy is way too unattractive to be a billionaire. Because you'd fix everything, right? So clearly, like, he doesn't have the money. If you were meeting him, you'd go, there's no way this 28-year-old has $1 billion. He would at least have a decent barber. Why are Democrats so stupid, Harold? That's what I'm saying.
So the investigation that Congress is going to pursue in this matter is the first time that Maxine Waters, who's chair of the committee up until January, and the ranking member who will be the chairman, a guy named Patrick McHenry, is the first time they've agreed on a hearing they want to hold. And they're going to hold this hearing in December, and they'll do it jointly, number one. Number two, I think anyone that received any contributions from, I can't even pronounce the young man's name, but Sam.
I understand, it was a rough night.
Anyone that received the donation, it might have been 3-1 Democrats, but there were Republicans who got it too. They should all give the money back. I don't think you hold a politician accountable for something he or she didn't know when the money was given. You may not like his business, or you may think his business is not something, you wouldn't go into that business, but you can't, Judge, it's a legal business the guy was in. Number three, they should regulate this. They should regulate this space. Yeah. And Judge, you and I know sometimes you can regulate a space, but if a person is just really bad and a terrible human being, I don't know if this gentleman is, but if a person's really bad, sometimes you can't even craft laws to make it right. But they should regulate this. They should be transparent about it, and I hope it's bipartisan. That way, people have trust in the laws when it gets done.
I think I heard an audible sigh from the judge, which means, Judge, what do you think?
First of all, anything that comes out of the House, the Senate isn't going to pass. And if they do pass it, the president isn't going to sign it. They're not going to allow any of us to look like we've got anything positive going for the American people. That's number one. Number two, the New York Times runs an article about Sam Bankman-Fried or Fried, what he is Fried.
You can't pronounce his name either.
Yeah, Sam Bankman-Fried, and I wasn't out with you last night. Sam Bankman-Fried. And, okay, and they say, oh, this guy maybe got in over his head. He seems like a nice enough, smart kid. He's got all the right things going on. The Washington Post is in tears. They're saying, oh, my God, the guy was trying to prevent the next pandemic.
Yeah.
So I look up, how's he trying to prevent the next pandemic? By supporting Democrats who say they want to prevent the next pandemic. It's like 80% of the money went to Democrats. It's not going to Republicans. They gave it to Republicans so they could say it was bipartisan. And let me tell you one more thing. The kid is a liar. He's a liar. He says he's a vegan, and he looks like an ice cream advertisement. Okay? And finally, let me just say, the guy should have been extradited already. We have an extradition treaty with the Bahamas. Lock him up, move him in.
Yeah.
But that's our Justice Department.
Dan, I think you might agree with me that we need less virtue signaling and more virtue.
Oh, yes, we do. That's a good idea.
Yeah,
You know,
Harold said that to me in the bathroom.
Last night.
Yeah.
Last night?
Yeah.
That was some
Fake
signaling.
news.
That was some signaling y'all were doing last night.
Yeah.
Indeed.
He signaled a lot of shots.
I guess. So one of the things that Sam Bankman-Fried said is that he was donating this money and that he would do it to liberal causes, right? And he then admits in an exchange with a reporter from Vox News, VOX, that he did it because it gave him the, as you used to call it,
what?
The scandal condom.
The scandal condom.
Do you remember the scandal condom?
Yes, yes. It keeps
Clinton Global Initiative.
Yeah, if you put everything into climate change, no one comes after all of your, like, philandering or whatever you're doing. Hunter did that. Everybody did that. I should do that. Why didn't I think of that? My life would be so much better.
Anyway, that's what I was just thinking, that he really did that, and it exposes it. But these things happen all the time. If you would not invest your mother's money in a company, then think twice before you invest in it yourself.
Good point.
Okay.
Excellent job. All right, we got to go because Harold's look kind of pale.
He just looks like that.
Much more to come from Florida, including crying Chuck Schumer's call for amnesty for millions of illegal.
Welcome back from Hollywood, Florida. The Democrats gearing up for an amnesty free-for-all in a move that's only going to make matters worse at the border. Chuck Schumer says we should welcome with open arms millions of illegal immigrants.
Immigrants make us stronger now more than ever. Now more than ever. We're short of workers. We have a population that is not reproducing it on its own with the same level that it used to. The only way we're going to have a great future in America is if we welcome and embrace immigrants, the dreamers, and all of them, because our ultimate goal is to help the dreamers, but get a path to citizenship for all 11 million or however many undocumented there are here.
But boy, what a contrast from way back in 2009 when Chuck was singing a completely different tune.
Illegal immigration is wrong, plain and simple. Until the American people are convinced that we will stop future flows of illegal immigration, we will make no progress on dealing with the millions of illegal immigrants who are here now and on rationalizing our system of legal immigration.
All right, Harold, so here you've got Chuck Schumer saying, you know, 11 million or whatever, we need to bring them in, we need to make America stronger. And then you've got Joe Biden, who's allowing all of this to happen. You've got Mayorkas, who's saying the border's secure. Isn't this part of a whole Democrat agenda to bring in as many illegals as they can? And to what end do you think that might be?
Well, a couple of questions there. I hope not, and I'm a Democrat, and I certainly don't support, I think, the path that you think some Democrats may be on. I've said for a long time, this is a 4 or 5 pronged solution, a 4 or 5 pronged part to bring about a solution. No. So I hope what Senator Schumer was doing there was perhaps throwing out a pie-in-the-sky idea with the hopes that that'll bring people to the table to figure out how we get an answer. I said it yesterday. I've said it many times on the show. Build a wall. You send more judges. You send more judges. You put more ICE there. You may have to change some personnel in the Biden administration to be able to get some of this done. But we have to secure the border for national security reasons before we can have any conversation about, which I believe we do need more workers in this country. But until we secure the border, we're not going to be able to build a coalition in Congress and the Senate to do that.
All right. Given that Chuck Schumer is, you know, the majority leader in the Senate, they have the House right now, and they've got the Oval. Do you think they can move fast enough in before the election so that they've got them in, legal, and ready to vote in 2024?
You lame duck the amnesty? I don't think they can pull it off. But they had both chambers under Barack Obama. They had both chambers under Joe Biden. Why didn't they do immigration reform then? The minute Republicans take the House, then they want to do amnesty? What does that tell you? It tells you they don't want to solve the problem, they want to campaign on the problem, and they want to paint Republicans as anti-Hispanic. That's what this is. It's just a political game.
Okay.
So, and he's also, if Americans aren't having babies, why can't we just have more babies? Why do we have to bring in foreigners to have the babies that we won't have? Why maybe we just get off our iPhones and dim the lights, Judge.
Yeah. Well, and you can do it tonight. All right, Dana, what's your response?
Well, I think that that Schumer's being super irresponsible, and you can see how he's had several different positions on the issue over time. And saying that you want to do amnesty without actually addressing the current border problem ensures that you will not get a legislative solution. And you know that Biden can't do a executive order to try to fix it because we know that will end up unconstitutional as well. So tonight at the Patriot Awards, you're going to see a sergeant from the Texas CBP or DH, I can't remember what they're, DPS, it's called, Texas DPS. He is somebody who is a pilot, and then he tracks down smugglers, and then he goes and he basically will find you as a human tracker, people who are trafficking in humans. He will find the smuggler, and that's what he does every single day. And his life's in danger. He said that a situation is so much worse than he's ever seen it before, and we're going to honor him tonight at Fox Patriot Awards.
All right, Greg, what's the resolution?
Well, first of all, you reminded me that from the A block that I neglected to mention that that's one of the hearings. We have to investigate Whipgate, find out why Mayorkas knew that wasn't a whip, but decided not to tell the president. That's something that is really valuable. Schumer says amnesty for all. By the way, he does remind me of the Penguin, but without the charm. Just needs a top hat and a cane and a monocle, and he's there. But he says amnesty for all because he knows that's not a compromise. He actually doesn't want it. He's not going anywhere near halfway. But his 2 points are kind of interesting. A declining population, that's true, and also the desire for cheap labor. Democrats love cheap labor. Who can forget slavery? So I think that's where he's coming from. And by the way, the reason why this was created, people don't need to work anymore because of stimulus, right? People are at home. You talk to people in the hotel industry. You talk to people in the bars. There aren't people showing up for work anymore because they don't have to.
Yep.
So what you're seeing right now is a temporary solution for something, a terrible experiment. What we're seeing, remember we were talking about guaranteed base income? Yeah, that's where you pay people even if they're not working. We just did that 2-year experiment and it was a disaster. So what's the solution? Bus in workers. That's what he's doing. It's a sad thing. I mean, they actually created the problem and are now offering a solution.
You're right.
Okay.
Thank you, Jesse.
Straight ahead from Florida, Chicago's dancing queen mayor.
And she's delivered all right. She's delivered nothing but bloodshed and mayhem for Chicago. Since Lori Lightfoot took office back in 2019, murders are up 35%, robberies are up 11%, and 5 major companies have either left or shut down stores. Do you think this is an effective ad, Judge Janine?
I think it's about as effective as she is, which is totally not effective. The amazing part, I mean, you all agree on this. Look, here's the thing. The amazing part is she comes out and she says, you know, crime is down. Well, then explain why Citadel and Boeing and
Some jobs, like, how dare you? No, we ordered some Law and Order. Thank you very much. And the children who are having to walk to school and their mothers fret at home because they're not sure if those kids are going to get back at night, they deserve a lot better. She's I think, going to run for re-election. But a lot of these cities, they re-elect them.
Yeah.
And then what are you supposed to do?
That's true. I guess the one part about the ad, Greg, it made me hungry.
Yeah, that's for sure. That guy wasn't suffering. He doesn't have to worry about murder because he's killing himself. So, I mean, seriously, I'd have a talk with the actor about getting into the gym. You know, I do think you guys have this wrong about Lori Lightfoot. She cares a lot about the environment, especially climate change, and she believes that you can lower the carbon footprint by letting people get murdered. Because that lowers the human carbon footprint, right? You see how it goes? And she's not worried about them being killed because they're not voters, right? That's it.
All right, that is it. Don't move a muscle. The host of the Patriot Awards, Pete Hegseth.
Again from Hollywood, Florida. There are patriotic Americans, and then there's Pete Hegseth. The man oozes red, white, and blue, and tonight, as host of the Patriot Awards, he's paying tribute to everyday heroes and honoring their incredible stories and sacrifices. Pete, welcome to the Five.
Hey, Harold, thank you very much.
I'm gonna let my one co-host who's told the truth about me today, who has a great show that comes on at 9 a.m. in the morning.
Thank you, Harold.
Reports.
Making up for
That's the
lost
first
time.
question.
Yeah, so yesterday when we went for a rehearsal, we were watching it yesterday, and I'm so excited for tonight. I met somebody who's going to get an award. His Colonel Don Patton. I don't know if you've had a chance to meet him yet, and his son is accompanying here. Ultimate patriot, an amazing, amazing guy. I think we have a couple pictures here that we can show. And he's just one of the many people who has done incredible things for this country. Never asked for anything, but is going to get an award tonight.
Never wants to ask for anything. And what he does is started a program to make sure the stories of World War II vets are preserved and told. And he's been doing it for decades in Minnesota to no accolades at all. And that's exactly what the Patriot Awards is about. He didn't do it for the spotlight, but tonight, and these 5 will be joining me at some point, so it's certainly not just me, it's all of us. We're going to throw the spotlight right on the people who really deserve it.
Yeah.
Our heroes, our patriots in this country.
He's also here with his son. We met his son last night as we were walking through. Greg?
Yeah, oozing red, white, and blue. Have you seen a doctor?
Not recently.
At least a urologist. You know, I was curious as to what is the criteria for winning an award, and be specific because I wasn't nominated. I'm asking for my fan base, which numbers in the hundreds of millions and billions. Shut up. If you include the whole world. And I'm just wondering why I'm not getting an award after a lot of my selfless work. And I'd like to add on that your hair does look amazing. Yeah. Right?
I asked them to give me the Jesse Waters look.
So, wait. So you're telling me it's fake?
It could be.
What is the criteria?
The criteria are Greg Gutfeld's not going to win. That's the criteria. It really is. I mean, it's probably the toughest job putting together the Patriot Awards is how do you choose from first responders to vets to police officers. There are so many stories. That's the impossible part of it. And you were nominated, just not selected.
Well, that's okay.
Just not selected. You are a patriot, Greg.
Jesse?
A lot of these other journalists get awards. We don't enter ourselves into these liberal mainstream award ceremonies, and that's probably a good thing. But this seems different because we're now presenting, as journalists, awards to other people. Is that the goal of this event?
The goal of the event is there was a gaping hole in the idea of awards. So you've got actors that play heroes on TV or best supporting actress in a comedy playing somebody, and then you're ignoring the very people who are the real heroes. So it's a layup.
Yeah.
And then, so they give each other awards and talk about how awesome they are while they preach at the rest of us about how horrible we are.
Right.
Well, we get to preach tonight about the things that really matter.
Your Honor, close us out here.
You know, Pete, this whole issue of veterans is something that is so near and dear to your heart. It's in your DNA. And I think that we really should applaud you for bringing this to Fox, for making sure that we respect the veterans. You are someone who should be congratulated. God bless you for what you do, Pete.
That's very kind of you, Judge. But one of the biggest moments from last year was we had most of the families of the 13 fallen in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And it was raw, and it was real, and it was close to that, and they stood up, and the room didn't stop clapping. And rightfully so, because that's where the spotlight goes. And we've got a few surprises tonight as well that'll probably have the same impact. So check it out. It's at Fox Nation. By the way, if you're a vet or first responder, 1 year's free on Fox Nation. So subscribe right now. Download the app. You can watch the Patriot Awards tonight, and I promise you, you will not be disappointed. And the after party